All right, Corey, we made it to VOICE22 in Washington, D.C. I love Veritone. I know you've been there for a couple of years. You're the director of product at Veriverse,
Yep.
which is a very exciting new development that's happened because of the partnership with Stats and Veritone. And so I thought, I got to grab Corey, bring you up. If nothing else, just selfishly, I got to know more.
Yeah, that's great. It's a pleasure to be here, honestly. And
Yeah.
so, little color around our Veriverse portfolio. We
Please.
do everything from synthetic voice to NFT minting. So it's really kind of a Web3 and also creating avatars and
Okay.
synthetic audio. So to your point, with our partnership with StatsPerform, we've got a pretty significant new product and offering that we're looking to go to market with.
Right. Now, talk to me about, you've been on staff for a couple of years, but this has been the focus for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So just like from a personal take, what was the transition like from what you did to taking on this responsibility?
Yeah, I think it was pretty similar roles, right? And so it's really kind of using creativity and kind of problem solving to find some new opportunities in the market. And so on a prior team, I was more focused on our platform, which is aiWARE, which does everything from transcription, translation, and automated workflows of AI data.
Yeah.
And really kind of applied that to this synthetic audio and synthetic media concept as well, working with StatsPerform. So it's another data input for our platform to do some really interesting things with.
Right. And so what is the end result of what's been built, and where is the product at in terms of to market, right? Is it MVP, proof of concept? Is it to market just to enterprise, or it can consume? So help me understand where we stand.
Yeah, great question. I think really the important thing is we've been in the synthetic audio space for over a year now and counting. So we have built up a pretty good amount of expertise in that space. We have really great relationships with the voice talent as well.
Yeah.
And so I think from an initial stage, we are very early in the process. Actually just got to see a demo from our dev team on a call about 3 minutes ago.
Wow.
And so they've built some pretty cool things that basically help us to take this raw event data from StatsPerform. So imagine it's a player ID, it's an ID that represents they made a pass, an ID from the concept of I made that pass with my left foot. And so what we're doing is we're taking all these facts and data components and actually expanding that out and proliferating it into dialogue. And so we're using NLG and other AI models to help us do that. So it becomes, he shoots, he scores, shot low and left away from the net, and those types of things. And so it really kind of adds that dynamic kind of capability and engagement to the content that we're producing. And we can do it in real time at scale. So it's not just one game, but it is the entire World Cup where they're playing multiple matches at once. And then again, because we are doing this at scale, the customization opportunities that are available are just, it's almost through the roof. But we are in the early stages here, and so it's really exciting to see and kind of ideate where we can go next.
Okay, so let me give you a scenario, and then you tell me the tech's there, but it takes customization, or the tech is X months, seasons, years away.
Mm-hmm.
A future Wimbledon happens. You happen to synthesize Serena Williams' voice and Andre Agassi's voice.
Mm-hmm.
And while the event is going on, there's multiple tennis matches all over the place at the same time. It's being live streamed to the whole entire world.
Yep.
And Veritone gets contracted out and say, Serena and Andre, they simply can't do everything at once, but we've worked it out to get their synthetic voice, and we have maybe partial live crowd, partial synthetic crowd. And so what we want, here's the end result we want. We want Andre Agassi and Serena Williams to be these sports announcers for every game at the exact same time, and we want what they say to be based off what actually happens on the tennis court, and we want nobody to be able to know that it's synthetic, even though we might tell them, but we don't want them to feel like it's synthetic. And how soon can we turn the key on that? And what is our expectations for what it will be like the first time we try it? So if they came to you, unlimited budget, you know what I mean by that?
Yep.
But reasonable, they're ready to pay for the value. Is that the type of thing that Veritone's ready to talk with people about?
Oh, absolutely.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so we've actually done a pretty significant proof of concept and initial development phase that really does actually create the synthetic voices, applies the actual sound effects. So if there's a goal, there's a collective enhancement and cheering. There's the background chants and drums that are going on constantly.
Wow.
if there's a near miss to a goal, we can have the collective audience groan in the background and say, oh, you know, it was a close shot. And so all of these things we've actually built for the POC and the demos that we're creating so that we can actually understand, A, how quickly we can turn that content around from those facts into dialogue. And as you heard in Sean's presentation, Sean and Steve Zeller's presentation, their fireside chat, we're actually going to be a little bit faster than broadcast TV. So it gives you the ability to actually apply more effects and more things that you couldn't even consider doing with a human broadcast, right? Because even in the human broadcast, you have stats perform in the background actually providing that color. Oh, that was Tom Brady, its 50th touchdown, or
right.
you know, this is
because the stats are all there for them to pull.
Exactly.
Yeah, because like Trent Dilfer, he and I have started some businesses together. He, obviously, quarterback that won a Super Bowl with the Ravens, Ray Lewis's first year, and he was on ESPN for a long time. And I knew his main guy that would feed him stats, and I didn't know, but like those sportscasters have 1, 2, or more guys that are constantly feeding them stats so that they can speak, but that wouldn't be necessary in this regard.
No, but in reality, as you just described, it's the same content. We are just taking the human out of the loop and creating that same type of engaging experience through audio and visual in that real-time format. And so I think the point that you brought up is we have McEnroe and Williams, they're commentating on these tennis matches, but let's say, you know, I want my favorite musical artist, in a soccer example, when there's a goal, I want them to do like a specific thing. And so now we're talking about engaging in a personalized delivery of sports media at that individual level. So it's really, I want my goals to sound like this. I want this person to commentate, and it doesn't just have to be McEnroe and Williams. It could really be anyone that is partnered with us and has their voice on our platform.
Wow. Okay, can you explain a bit about how this works with celebrities? Because it'd be easy for somebody to listen to our conversation and be like, who said that Williams and McEnroe want to announce the entire Wimbledon? Like, just because you have access to his voice, how do you know that? Okay, so it's more than just a contract, right? It's not just that you buy their voice, you do whatever you want with it. There are things to honor and protect the celebrities and those that people like to listen to. So can you walk through this process a bit and how Veritone works so that people understand the incredible amount of things that happen under the water for the tip of the iceberg?
Absolutely, and that's a great point. The ethical use of the voice models is our top priority, right? Yeah. And so, in order for our voice or these voice models to be leveraged, we actually have a verbal and written consent process that occurs. And in the case of, you know, someone's posthumous on their estate, we can go to them and actually get those same type of rights for that content. And so, now you're talking Stats Perform has 100 years of sports data. We have the estate permission from some of the most prolific and familiar voices, so we can recreate content from in the past.
Right.
But to your point, you know, in that state, usually in the agreements, there are specific use cases, and in a lot of cases, voice talent will have conflicts of interest saying, oh, well, you know, I actually did a true recording with CVS, and now Walgreens is like, hey, I want you to produce a synthetic ad with this voice. Well, we wouldn't be able to do that because there's that brand alignment that they're looking to maintain.
I see.
But from the flip side, now you can actually, as an organization, you can obtain rights to a voice and create digital personalities leveraging those voice models. So it's really about like unified communications with the same voice in multiple channels. So Web3, maybe you have an avatar experience, maybe you've got the same voice on your IVR, maybe you have digital assets on Web2 that's just kind of go and click and point.
Yes.
So it's really, I think it's just going to open up a significant set of opportunities for both brands and the voice talent to drive new chances for revenue and new ways to your eloquent point, be in many places at once without having to go into a studio recording booth.
So on many places at once, let's say that arguably the Olympics is the biggest sporting event of the world. World Cup might be bigger, but let's just say the Olympics is because most countries participate at a similar level of effort.
Yep.
So therefore, we know that the Olympic broadcasters are broadcasting in several dozen, maybe 100 plus languages. So what is the opportunity for the world's greatest broadcasters. Maybe those that brought the Olympics to us in the 1940s, the 1960s, 1980s, they're no longer with us, but us and our parents or grandparents have this affinity for them and their voice, and there's a certain level of trust and comfort to them, and let's say that they have their synthetic voice made. I understand that Veritone can make any synthetic voice that is naturally in English, but then make a French, a Portuguese, a German, a Russian version of that voice. So the question would be, what is the opportunity for that Olympics 2028, 2026, to potentially be broadcast by some of this talent that you've acquired the rights to their voice and gotten the approval, to not only have them broadcast the Olympics in their voice, but to broadcast it in their voice in multiple different languages, so that the whole world could partake of this, new and unique way of bringing sport to life with those that we trust most to tell us about what's happening in that moment.
Absolutely. So great point. I think localization is also one of our key priorities with this. It's making content more accessible, to your point, in multitude of languages so that people can immediately pick that up and run with it. And so I think from that perspective, to your point as well, we have very solid capabilities in order to actually drive that custom voice model in a multitude of different languages.
Yeah.
And then you can actually, in some cases with our speech-to-speech technology, what you can do is actually hire a voice actor. So for example, maybe Serena wouldn't actually be available for some content, but we have someone who can speak similar to her with similar intonations, and it comes out with that same human quality that drives her voice is done by an actor. And so I think, to your point, we are doing this with our podcasts as well. We've got a significant podcast portfolio, and Sean made a great point a couple of weeks ago. Like, something about just adding in another language increases your viewership or some opportunities by about 16%. So
Crazy.
Like if you're kind of thinking about, now you have two languages, there's a whole new plethora of opportunities out there for you to both expand your brand and your voice, but also to kind of provide knowledge and information in places where you probably couldn't have in the past.
Wow. On that, this doesn't tie to what you're working on directly, but I just want to give a little more flavor for those that might listen to what we are talking about. So if you took like a major content creator, so let's say an Oprah Winfrey level, right? A Russell Brand level, a Brene Brown level, anybody in that field, like the Joe Rogan level, have a real world stage at this point. And they say, okay, make my voice and take all of my polished content, and I want you to make that in the dozen top languages. So what would the process be for their agent, their representation, to start that conversation with Veritone? And because I think some folks are going to be interested in what your answer is in that regard.
Absolutely, yeah. And we have clientele they're probably friends with the people that you listed. So,
right.
And so I think they're very excited about that. And for us, it's really just starts with a conversation, kind of trying to understand where that person would feel the need would be, and kind of where they see the opportunity. And so it could be we're working with some folks that are potentially looking to do like church broadcasts over in multiple languages with a certain personality, right? That's going to drive that level of engagement. And so for us, we just like to understand where they want to go, kind of what success looks like, and then, to your point, depending on the level of automation or scale that they're looking for, then we would start to apply and understand the technical patterns that we'd want to implement in order to solve that. So, for example, in the stats perform example, we are literally turning these fax data around in a couple of seconds, right? And so depending on what the need is, we're applying those sound effects, we're doing post-production sound effects, and all of that's happening very quickly. Some people may not care to do real time. They may, record the sermon, for example, turn that around and, batch process that over a week, right? And so it's really, how can we best fit the need to help deliver what that experience that person's actually looking to have?
Yeah, it's wild to think about. Like, if you think of Billy Graham, like, how many countries might he have traveled to? How many cultures might he have spoken to with a translator? And if you could imagine pulling maybe what would be considered by his, family estate, his best message on the continent of Asia, this best message on the continent of Europe, and then imagine that message from 30 or 40 years ago being translated to all these different languages, but it's his voice speaking. This is the type of developments that Veritone is bringing to life.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's great points. Great points.
I had this funny thought as we wrap up. When you were explaining some things, I am blown away. And I was like, I just imagine like we made a voice for Pete Erickson, who runs this conference, and he's like, announcing our conversation. And right now, Ian is blown away and has no idea what to ask next.
That's one of our engagements too. We're working on audio descriptions and other backgrounds for media and entertainment companies. So to your point, when someone's at the airport and they announce, next flight out of gate 32, that could be a synthetic voice that's producing that. And so it's really, to your point, the opportunities, it's just crazy what's out there and the opportunity that's available.
Yeah. Well, it was so good to sit down with you, Corey.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
If people want to find out more about the product that you and your team are developing, and it covers more than we're talking about with sport, right? You talked NFTs, you talked metaverse, on and on.
Yep.
What is the best way for them to learn more or potentially reach out either as a potential client or a partner or something of that regard?
Yeah, great question. I think we just released a new website called VeritoneVoice.com. So that's going to be very specific to our voice products.
Yes.
We also have a website called Veriverse, or they can just go to Veritone.com. That's a great place to start. But there's going to be a plethora of samples, examples, how, to your question, how to get started, what's a workflow look like.
Yeah.
Most importantly, there's some call to actions so they can fill out some of their contact information and send that over to us to get the conversation started.
Right. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, it's so good to sit down with you. So
My
glad
pleasure.
that you're here. Absolutely. Anybody that watched that conversation, that was pretty rad, right? Congratulations for being able to hear all these new updates that Veritone's brought to market. If you don't know me, my name's Ian Utilli. I am the CEO at Attention Live, and it's fun to bring you these fireside chats from VOICE22 here in Washington, D.C. I might be done. I think I've done a couple dozen, so I might not have any more for you. But until next, there's one more. Never mind. I'm back with one soon. And until then, have a happy day.